This very orange car is the 2013 Subaru XV Crosstrek. Now don't worry, it does come in several different colors. Now, regardless of the exterior color choice, and yes, the XV does come in colors other than orange, you always get these black wheels on the XV. Now, that's a good thing for some people and a bad thing for others. Really just depends on how you feel about black wheels. If the XV Crosstrek looks familiar to you, then you're not going crazy, because this is essentially the SUV version, if you'd like to think of it that way, of the Impreza hatchback. Basically, what they've done is they've jacked it up to an SUV like nearly 9 inches of ground clearance. They've added, of course, some black cladding and those black wheels. Now, this is essentially the same formula that Subaru uses to create the Outback, and by happenstance, since the Outback has continued to grow and so has the Impreza, this is essentially the same size as the original Outback. Because this is a Subaru, you'll find two things under the hood. You'll find a boxer engine and you'll find symmetrical all-wheel drive. Now, essentially what a boxer engine means is that instead of having the cylinders all in a little row or in a V configuration, as is pretty normal in most vehicles, these cylinders are horizontally opposed. So they're 2 cylinders on each side, and essentially they meet in sort of a boxing fashion, which is why they call it a boxer engine. Now, this engine design is typically smoother than an inline 4-cylinder engine. However, it is much wider, and as you can see, this is a fairly wide engine under the hood. Now, this particular engine is Subaru's new 2-liter boxer engine. It produces 148 horsepower and 148 pound-feet of torque. This is very closely related to the new boxer engine found under the hood of the FRS and the BRZ. As you would also expect from Subaru, you do get a manual transmission option that is the base transmission in this particular vehicle. It's a 5-speed manual, and for $1,000 you can get the CVT, which is a continuously variable transmission. Now, the CVT does improve your fuel economy ratings on this vehicle from 2330 to 2533. On the inside of the XV Crosstrek, you'll find interior trappings that are essentially appropriate for the price tag of this vehicle. We have a soft touch, slightly rubbery upper dash with a hard plastic lower dash. We have fairly nice trim around the radio and very nice solid feeling knobs in the dashboard. We of course have a plastic, or I should say urethane steering wheel over here. Leather wrapped steering wheel is not available in this particular model of car. It is available in the limited trim of the XV Crosstrek, however. The cloth seats in our premium model are soft and do appear to be fairly durable. Now, this driver's seat is manual, of course, because we are in the XV Premium, not the limited model. We do still have a height adjustable driver's seat, however, and a tilt telescoping steering wheel. On the downside, the telescoping action of this steering wheel is not the largest that I've seen, and we don't get any kind of adjustable lumbar support in the driver's seat. However, seating comfort for me at 6 feet tall is very good in this particular vehicle, and the lumbar support is just about right for me. But I do like a bit more lumbar support than some people, so you should spend some time in this seat and make sure it's comfortable for you. If your feet are large, then you'll like the fact that this car has a very large footwell, and even someone with a size 11 and 14 shoe had no problems in this particular car driving it. And that is kind of a nice feature, because some of these newer cars do seem to have, for some reason, a very constricted footwell there in the driver's side, making it more difficult to drive with a larger shoe. Rear seat comfort in the XV Crosstrek is fairly good, but you have to keep in mind that this vehicle is a small vehicle. Again, is a Impreza hatchback essentially that has a higher ground clearance. So while we do have decent headroom in the back thanks to that hatchback profile, this front seat's adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, and I only have about 1.5 inches of legroom left. Now, the seat bottom cushion is also a little bit close to the floor. It's fairly common in vehicles like this these days. If you have children in the back seat, this is actually better for them, but if you have adults in the back seat frequently, then you won't really get much thigh support. Another important thing to keep in mind with the XV Crosstrek, but also with anything that's intended to go off-road, is that these door sills are a bit high in this particular vehicle, meaning you really have to lift your leg up and then out to get out of the vehicle. That makes getting in and out of the vehicle if you're older a little bit more difficult, but it means that if you're trying to ford a stream or go through a very deep puddle, something like that, you won't get any water in the vehicle. If I move over to the middle seat, you'll notice another thing that's very obvious about this vehicle, and again, that's because of the all-wheel drive system. That's we have a fairly large hump in the middle. And that's really just to be expected in any car that has a permanent all-wheel drive system, but it does mean that a middle passenger has a little bit less room. One thing you won't find in the back of the XV Crosstrek are cup holders that are designed to hold normal cups. Now there are some bottle holders in the door, but most manufacturers recommend that you do not put standard takeout drive-through cups in the doors, because if they do leak, then you're going to be taking the entire door apart to try and clean that up. For extra cargo carrying capacity, the rear seats do fold completely flat with the rear cargo area. And that is important because it's much easier to drag boxes and other items from the cargo area straight into this area right over the seat. The XV scores 8 out of 10 points in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index because this is a fairly large cargo area for a vehicle that's this size. Now, this cargo area is covered in fairly hard plastic, but that does mean that it's going to be easier to wipe down if you should need to. There's also an optional cargo tray liner here that's sort of rubbery, help catch spills and melting snow, things like that. Of course, I do have the largest roller bag you can carry on a domestic flight back here with me, and you could fit several of those under an optional tonneau cover. Now, this tonneau cover isn't standard in this particular model, but I would recommend getting one if you were to buy this vehicle because it is nice to kind of hide your belongings. So how much will an XV Crosstrek set you back? Well, our particular model here is the premium model, and that starts at $21,995. Of course, you do get the manual transmission for that. The CVT is another $1,000. And if you'd like leather and automatic climate control, then you need to step up to the limited model, which is $24,495. That does make the automatic transmission standard, however, in this particular car. There aren't too many options to choose from, but you can add the navigation system as well as the moonroof, which adds about $2,000 to that total price tag, meaning your absolutely completely loaded XV Crosstrek is just over about $26,000 or so, so it's a fairly inexpensive ride. Our particular XV Crosstrek has the optional $1,200 navigation system. This unit is also available as part of a $2,000 package with the optional moonroof. Now we have our usual AM/FM satellite radio. We of course have a fully featured iPod interface, as well as a optional audio input that's located in the center console with a standard stereo mini jack. We of course have our Bluetooth phone interface as well. Now, because Subaru is owned by Toyota these days, you'll notice a few things that are similar to other Toyota products, mostly in the voice command interface in this particular unit. Now, of course, on the iPod, we do have full access to our playlists, to songs, to genres, through this system interface via the touchscreen here, or you can also voice command them in this particular system.
Voice command, please.
Artists.
Search artist. Please say artist name.
Madonna.
Madonna.
As you can see, the system works fairly well, although you cannot search for tracks on this particular system at the moment, which is a little bit odd, I think. You can search for playlists, you can search for artists and genres, but you can't voice command search for particular tracks. If you want to find a particular track and you don't know the artist, then you're going to have to actually use the search feature here and try and find it manually. Over on the map interface, this should be fairly familiar to you if you use an aftermarket nav system now. This is very Garmin-like in terms of operation. We can voice command address entry in this particular system, and the display does show traffic information as well. Overall, I find the interface in this particular system a little bit less intuitive than Ford or Toyota's products. As you can see, there are a lot of small buttons going on this screen, and the screen just doesn't seem to use its real estate as efficiently as I might like. The navigation interface is fairly easy to use, although it too suffers from a slightly less than intuitive layout. Subaru does not offer a traditional automatic transmission in the XV Crosstrek, so your only options are that manual transmission or the CVT. Now, a lot of people dislike the CVT transmissions, and if that's you, then you're really not going to like this transmission either, because it operates essentially the same as pretty much everybody else's CVT. However, I really think that they are a good solution to a number of different problems. The first problem being fuel economy, of course. I've been averaging 29.8 miles per gallon and about 500 miles of mixed driving in this particular vehicle, and that includes going up and over a 2,200-foot mountain pass. Second thing they do is improve performance, because they can keep that engine in the optimum power band for as long as they like. Of course, we only have 148 horsepower under the hood, but hill climbing in a vehicle like this is much more predictable, much easier, honestly, than in a similar vehicle with a similar engine and a regular automatic transmission. And that's because to keep going up that hill at that constant speed, this particular vehicle can change the ratio of the transmission anytime that it wants to. So a regular automatic transmission and a vehicle like this, you'd end up slowing down, and then the transmission would downshift, and then you'd speed back up, and then the transmission would upshift, and you'd slow back down. And in this particular vehicle, you don't do that. The transmission just varies the ratio, and you just sort of get a lot of noise coming from underneath the hood, but you stay a constant speed on mountain passes, and I personally prefer that. The suspension in the Crosstrek is fairly firm for an SUV, a CUV, or pretty much anything with almost 9 inches of ground clearance. And the handling is fairly good in this particular vehicle, although it is limited by these fairly narrow tires, of course, and that higher center of gravity just from being raised up so high. Subaru's all-wheel drive system is marketed an awful lot. Honestly, it's not that much better than many of the other competitors in terms of raw outright performance, but it is much more confident. And that's because this system is always engaged. It's always sending at least 40% of the power to the rear wheels via a multi-plate clutch setup. And that means that there is no slip and grip going on in the Subaru all-wheel drive system. So if you were going to drive something like a new Ford Escape or a Kia Sportage or something like that out on ice and snow, then there would definitely be a slip where the rear wheels slipped or the front wheels slipped, and then the car decided to apportion the power around. Whereas this particular system is always, under all circumstances, splitting the power at least 60-40, with 60% of the power going to the front, 40% of the power going to the rear, and of course it can alter that whenever it feels like by just simply locking up that center clutch pack. That always-on all-wheel drive system makes this car much more confident in a wide variety of slippery surfaces, and it's also more surprising when you look at the fuel economy in this vehicle, because again, we're getting almost 30 miles per gallon in mixed driving, which is fairly amazing for an all-wheel drive system that's always on. That's been our quick look at the 2013 Subaru XV Crosstrek. You should of course go ahead and like us on Facebook, subscribe to our video feed on YouTube, check out thetruthaboutcars.com, and as always, tell us what you like and what you don't like about this video and what you'd like to see next.